What's up YouTube, Dal here from Zephyr, and today I am bringing you one of the decks that has been positively affected by the new ban list, and that is of course Kashtira. So this build is going to be a little bit different from those you may have already seen online, and the reason for that is I have built this to be a bit more aggressive and more about going second than going first. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take you through the deck. I'm going to show you the main cards that I think are staple no matter which version you are playing, and then I'll take you through a small side of cards that I'm going to be using for the go second version, but you can very easily adapt them for a go first version if you want to. So with all of that out of the way, please smash that like button, hit that notification bell and subscribe so you don't miss out on any more upcoming content. So we're going to start off with the return of the Mac, and that is of course triple Kashtira Unicorn. So the reason that this is such a big deal coming back to free is it is giving the deck back a lot of consistency, because being able to get to a card like Kashtira Unicorn is the best of all the starters, as it does so much on its own. This being able to get you into Theosis is just absolutely insane, not to mention being able to get you into Birth as well for those grind games. Then of course we are picking up with the insane staple for pretty much 99% of the decks, and that is of course Kashtira Fenrir. Not much more really needs to be said about this guy here. We then have two Kashtira Rise Heart. I personally feel two is enough. I feel that when I played Kashtiras before this, I feel that always constantly running into multiples could be a bit of an issue, and being able to pretty much search this off the back of the Fenrir or banishing and everything else you need to do, especially summon this down, banish the Big Bang and then summon off of the back of an XYZ, can be very, very useful. Now the strategy off of the back of something like the Kashtira deck is more so like if you want to go down control route, you can do quite easily, but if you want to go down the aggressive route, you also get the ability to not rely on Shangri-La as much and just be able to just pretty much go all out aggression, which you can do with just your Kashtira monsters. Not to mention, even being locked into XYZs, the one thing that this deck will have now is this now has the ability to turn a Theosis target that is put in defense or a Rise Heart that is being put into attack into a 2900 boss monster in the form of Typhoon. Now obviously if we are going second and we're pushing to be an OTK orientated deck, being able to do that upgrade can be near invaluable. The other Kashtiras we are playing is of course the one Ogre and the one Kashtira Scareclaw. The reason we're still playing Ogre is we do play the one trap in the deck, and that's just going to be for the grind game should you need to. You could play something like Big Bang as well if you want to increase your board presence when you are going second or when you are going first as well. The other thing with Ogre as well, being able to be a 2800 boss monster and being able to look at the top 5 cards of your opponent's deck and know what's coming at you does allow you to kind of give you a bit more of a different dimension. The best thing about the Scareclaw as well is it can attack in defense, which is absolutely invaluable, and being able to negate a monster effect when one of your Kashtiras declares an attack is very, very important. Then for the hand traps, of course, what makes this deck what it is you can main Dimension Shifter. Now there's very few decks out there that can actually main the Dimension Shifter, but those that can are incredibly powerful when you're looking at stuff like Exo-Sisters, probably a bit more rogue, and of course the Flunderees. When you're a deck like Kashtira's, you also get the ability to benefit off of the back of a card like this, and a lot of the main meta decks may struggle. Now this might change a little bit because we are going to get brand new Ritual Beasts coming very, very shortly, but being able to kind of go toe-to-toe with most meta decks just because you're able to play a card like D-Shifter, it just does it on its own sometimes as well. Yes, it is a bit of risk and reward because if you don't see this going first and you're putting cards in your graveyard, it's not that great. But unlike trying to rely on something like a Ash Blossom, being able to D-shift it and know that 99% of the time it's going to end an opponent's turn is invaluable, especially when you're trying to play a go second build. On top of that as well, when D-Shifter is activated, you don't need to worry about Drone Lockbird or Effect Veiler, as they have to go to the graveyard in order to be activated. So when you're under D-Shifter, or your opponent is under D-Shifter, and you're pushing for an OTK, you know all of your searches are pretty much going to be safe, and most of your monster effects, bar an Imperm, is also going to be safe. Speaking of Imperm, of course, we are playing free Infinite Impermanence. As you'll see, I'm not playing Ash Blossom, and the reason for that is because this is the go second version. I would rather those free Ash Blossom spaces become free aggressive board breaking cards. They can either be something like along the lines of Lava Golem or Super Poly. Yes, you can play Super Poly in the go first version, but the idea was, and what I kind of go with a build like this, is I'd rather hold back my resource knowing that one card can help break multiple monsters than activating an Ash Blossom that may get hit with a Cool Bite or may get stopped or may not end their turn. Whereas if it comes back to me and I've got a board breaker in its place, which in this example, if I was talking about Lava Golem, if I see Lava Golem where I would normally see Ash Blossom, this can be probably more valuable to me in order to break their board apart and then push for an OTK. Now, obviously, this is only going to be effective against certain matchups. Like when you look at the Labyrinth matchup, it can be quite bad because they're not always going to be putting 2 monsters on the board, but it is the middle ground balance and probably one of the best cards for this particular type of deck. Carrying on with the rest of the Kashtira cards, of course, we are playing 3 Pressured Planet. Now, I'm undecided if I want Terraforming in the deck or not. I quite like the idea of, like, you can't always guarantee you're going to have Shifter to play around Droll, whereas I quite like the idea of, okay, activate Planet, search out Unicorn. Unicorn can be special summoned down and do whatever it needs to do. I suppose the same could be said, like if you activate Terraform and search out Planet and they draw you, it's like, right, okay, well, I now can't use the planet to its max ability. I'm undecided. I'm still testing around with it. I know some decks play it, some decks don't. I'm not entirely sure yet. Like the card's insanely important, being able to get to a Unicorn, but no matter what you do in a Kashtira deck, and like unless your hand is completely cracked, every time you search, a Droll can be very, very damaging. So you do need to be a little bit careful. Triple Kashtira Birth, like this card's just crazy broken. And then Triple Theosis, love the artwork on this. I don't know what it is. I just love the color mixture on this, like the green with the red and the blue. It just looks really, really kind of cool. And the last one, of course, is Preparation. Like I said, this is for the grind game. Really does put in a lot of work. So now I'm going to show you the cards that can be interchangeable. I know a lot of the builds right now are playing Super Poly, and the more and more I thought about it, I was like, well, I'm either going to play Super Poly or I'm going to play Lava Golem. So it really does come down to the environment that you're taking this to, whether you feel that Super Poly is more effective for you or if Lava Golem is more effective for you. Obviously, the benefits of something like Super Poly is if it can break technically the same board that Lava Golem could break, you're going to get an additional monster on the board. It can allow you to utilize your monsters as well should you need to if your opponent is trying to target them or destroy them. And on top of that as well, it allows you to be able to set and be utilized during your opponent's turn. The benefit that Lava Golem has is it doesn't require a discard, it is what it is, and it can help you out going into time by being able to summon down a Lava Golem, pass it to your opponent, and then they burn during the standby phase, which might be enough to complete the OTK if you leave the Lava Golem on the board, or if it might be enough to burn them in time just to give you that win should you need it. Both of them have pros and cons. It really does come down to personal preference. You're either going to main the Super Poly or the Lava Golems and then possibly side the other. Personally, right now, I quite like the idea of Super Poly. I was originally with Lava Golem, and I kind of changed my mind and thought, okay, Super Poly might be more effective on a more balanced route. In case I can't guarantee that I'm going to go first, I will still have that ability to, or go second, I will still have that ability to utilize a card like Super Poly. But then in my environment, if the Super Poly is not effective because the range of builds is just not within Super Poly targets, then you might switch to something more like a Lava Golem just to deal with those pesky SP Little Knights and everything else like that. The best thing about this is if your opponent is fearful and are worried about a Super Poly and they try to play around it, and you've sided them out for Lava Golems, you can catch them on guard like that. If you start off with Lava Golems and everyone starts playing around Lava Golem, then you can go back into your Super Polys, and that's where your own monsters will come into play in order to kind of deal with that as well. So for now, of this particular profile, the main deck is, of course, Super Poly. Then, of course, the other cards are go second cards, which can become your Ash Blossoms. They become more hand traps. They can become more control cards, entirely up to you. I've gone with Double Talents, Tactics Thrust, Double Book of Eclipse. I've just had success with this in the past. I still really like it. Yes, okay, it does put all my opponent's monsters in defense, which does make it a little bit more difficult to kind of break through. But it does give that ability, again, quite like Super Poly, that it's a very good go first and go second card. And I just feel there's a lot of times where activating Eclipse during the draw phase does cause my opponent a lot of issues. Now, obviously, if this doesn't work for you and it's not that great for your local environment, again, you can change it out. The targets that I'd probably arguably change it out for is something like Sacred Sword of 7 or Mind Control, because you can technically get Mind Control off the back of the Thrust. The one thing I don't play in this build that I'm trying to find a way to justify putting it in, and I want to test more and more to guarantee that I can get the OTK, is Pot of Prosperity. Now, I know more than anyone how good Pot of Prosperity can be in this deck. But unlike in the past, what you could do is you could activate Prosperity, you could even play something like Evenly Matched, break off an entire board, and then sit a Rise Heart Pass. Now you can't do that. Now your best sit board would be something like a Shangri-La and maybe a Red Eyes Flare, and they're not as protected against the standard meta boards and the recursion that is going on in the game. So it's something to kind of look at. I'm not entirely set on it yet. Obviously, you would need to put on 16,000 damage, which I think is a lot harder to do. Which is also why you don't play. I'm not playing evenly in this main deck, and I'm not playing Dark World No More because of that exact example. But again, something with a little bit more testing, trialing out. These might very easily become Ash Blossoms. They could very easily become Ghost Mourners. It is entirely up to you. Then of course I've got 2 forbidden droplets, so you can see that I've got a range of 2s because I'm not set on anything one particular card as of yet. But again, very easily, take out an Eclipse, becomes the 3rd forbidden droplet, take out an Eclipse, comes the 1st Frost. I am playing at 2 Lightning Storm. Obviously it is only at 2, but technically you can count it as 4 copies. And the reason Lightning Storm is good to have is because it can deal with front row and or back row. I did consider putting Harpy's Feather Duster in here, but I was like, if the Harpy's Feather Duster isn't going to help me against back row because maybe my opponent's Fire King Island is protected, or maybe because there's not a lot of control decks where I'm going and the Duster isn't going to be as effective, I'll be better off siding that in. Whereas Lightning Storm, a lot of people aren't expecting it in the main deck, so they might get a little bit lapsical and put their monsters in attack, or they go into something like SP Little Knight and you go, okay, cool, Lightning Storm, a clear board, get rid of the SP Little Knight, and then you can push in for the OTK. I've then got the 1 Sacred Sword of 7. So this was just to kind of replace what Plot of Prosperity was going to give you. And again, I'm not set on how many of this I want to play. The idea of playing it at 1 was because it comes off the back of Frost. So it's like, okay, well, if I've got Birth and my opponent has stopped everything, but Birth is still resolved, but I haven't got a Kashtira banished, but I've got a Kashtira in the hand, but I've got a monster on the board, I can activate Sacred Sword of 7, banish it from the hand, draw 2 new cards, and then bring back the Kashtira monster. So that's the process behind it. I'm not sure if I want to bump this up more. I do need a little bit more testing with the deck. I'm debating whether I'm going to be taking this or whether I'm going to be taking something like Orcust to the next local event. And then the final options off of the back of your Triple Tactics Frost is, of course, 1 Talents and 1 Change of Heart. You can very easily be playing Mind Control if you want to, but the reason I chose Change of Heart over Mind Control is this allows you to still attack with the monster, whereas Mind Control you would then need to use it as Link fodder, which when you see the extra deck, we're only playing 1 Link monster, or as XYZ fodder, which does become a little less relevant unless you're going to turn it into a Sky Typhoon. So again, you're kind of adapting it to the local environment, what you see works the most, and how you'd want to adapt it. So that's it for the entire main deck. Moving on to the extra deck. Now with the extra deck, again, I still haven't decided the final 3 slots of the deck. There is one card that I want to be bumping up to more than 1. I just need to get another copy of it, and I'll explain it when I get there. So I've got the 1 Shangri-La. I feel 1 is more than enough. You could play 2 if you want to, but you're not playing this deck like a zone lock option. The Shangri-La is probably going to be one of the ones where if you can't complete the OTK, you make Shangri-La and then you try and sit on this to bring out the Fenrirs, to bring out the Unicorns, protect, rip your opponent's extra deck apart, and then build from there. Then of course you've got the Draco Sack just to deal with skill drain sometimes. Big Eye is probably one of the ones that I could arguably see myself playing 2 of, just because being able to change a heart and then also being able to Big Eye can be very, very important. Another card that I would want to consider putting in here is IP Masquerena, and the only reason for that would be to go IP into SP, but ultimately, again, because this deck is built and designed to be aggressive and go second OTK, I've tried to kind of stay away from cards like I need to be setting up going first. The 1 Dark Arm Dragon Annihilation, Red Eyes Flare Metal. Again, if you cannot complete the OTK, Red Eyes Flare Metal is one of them ones that can really, really help you. The Harmonizing Gradiel, this is actually really kind of cool. So this one is also treated as each of its attached materials, and it cannot be destroyed by battle with monsters of the same attribute. Also cannot be destroyed by the activated effects of your opponent's monsters with the same attribute, which is really important in the Fire King matchup because you have a quick effect to target one of your opponent's monsters in their graveyard, detach a material from this card, and if you do, you attach that target to this as material. So why that's so good is if your opponent destroys a Fire King monster or you destroy a Fire King monster, you're able to attach it as material so that it won't get its float effect during the next standby phase. On top of that as well, it also allows you to bring back the Garunix from the graveyard or attach the Garunix from the graveyard so that they can't bring it back should you destroy a Fire King monster by battle. So that's very, very important, and I feel that this could be a very good card in the Fire King matchup that not a lot of people think about. The final XYZs we play are, of course, the Arsenal AA Zeus and, of course, the Typhoon. Typhoon's the one monster that I would like to consider putting this at 2, just because I feel in the grind game it can be incredibly important. Like I said about the XYZ kind of push for this card, is that you're ideally going to be going, okay, I've built my entire board with the Kashtira monsters. The board doesn't allow me to get into a Super Poly target, or none of my Super Poly targets are live. I would then want to make a Typhoon. Typhoon would then upgrade one of your monsters that is usually going to be less than 2400 attack or whatever it needs to be, and upgrade it. On top of that as well, if you do have the Planet Rice-Off in play, you can go into a Sky Crisis Typhoon. For example, if you've got 2 fires on the board, you can basically go into Sky Crisis Typhoon on top of one of those fires, and then it will increase the attack of all of the other monsters on the board if you don't already have a Dark on there. So not only will it upgrade the attack of the monster you're putting it on top of, but then in theory, it would then also upgrade the attacks of the rest. Yes, of course, by one attack adaptation on Sky Crisis, it does lose its effect to bounce. But quite like what I said with my Darkwell build when I'm playing a card like this, is when you're summoning Typhoon, you're basically summoning it because you want the skill drain effect as primary. Now, obviously, the whole idea is that Typhoon can out Zeus. And it's like, yes, it can. It can out Zeus whether it has its effects or not. The only time it won't be able to out Zeus is if it only gets 100 attack boost, and it's very, very rare that that's going to happen off of the back of one, because you're going to have more than one attribute on the board. So that's going to be able to be stronger than Zeus, so it can just kill Zeus outright without Zeus being able to nuke the entire board. It just won't be able to bounce, which I think is completely fine. And then, of course, for the super body target, it's pretty staple on this. So you've got your Mud Dragon generic, Garura generic, and then, of course, you've got the one Guilty. Now, the reason you go for the Guilty is 2 warrior monsters with different attributes can come up quite consistently depending on the local environment. I couldn't really think of what other targets that you would want to put in here that wasn't going to be local dependent. Now, obviously, if your local dependent area is playing Darks and is playing Fusions, you can go Dracostapelia, and you can also go for Starving Venom. The final monster that I'm going to show you is the SP Little Knight. It's just such a broken card. You'd obviously need to do this before you go into Rise Heart because it will lock you into XYZs, but that's just something to kind of keep in mind. And just being able to make something like SP Little Knight is absolutely insane and very, very important. So that's why I'd probably want to be looking at the last 3 slots to be something like an IP, and then whatever else is relevant for the environment, like a second Typhoon and then one other card. Another card that a lot of people are playing is, of course, Baron. But the reason I'm not playing Baron is because I'm not playing those hand traps of Ash Blossom or Ghost Mourner. And obviously, if you are playing those because you don't want to play the board breaking options, then, of course, Baron can go into here very easily. Because the idea is that you special summon out a Kashtira monster, normal summon one of your hand traps, sink into a Baron. And the reason you'd be doing something like that is because you've already set up the ability for stuff like Birth to go off, Theosis to go off, you name it, you've got more options in order to help you out. Again, keeping in mind that when you activate Theosis, you are also locked into XYZs, so you need to make sure that if you're going to go into SP or if you were to go into Baron, you need to be doing all of that before you go from there. So that's pretty much it for the list. Like I said, I wanted to make it a little bit different from those that I have seen online. Other cards that I'd like to highly consider if I was going first would be stuff like D-Fissure. And the reason I would like a card like D-Fissure is because it's a card I can activate. It can be very damaging, especially to the Fire King strategy. And even the Sinful Spore strategy as well, because obviously the Witch won't go to the graveyard to get banished. But the reason that that is so good is, again, neither player can draw each other. And if draw is such a big issue and you don't care about the graveyard and you're like, right, well, what I don't want to do is I don't want to go special on Fenrir, effect to search, draw, and be like, cool, pass. Whereas if you activate D-Fissure, summon out Fenrir, then use Fenrir's effect, I almost guarantee you 9 times out of 10 they will try and draw you and you'll have to go, no, you can't draw me because Fissure's up, it can't go to the graveyard. So it's very, very important when you are playing a card like that. And I feel that that's a little bit faster because you can also use that going second, whereas Macrocosmo needs to be set. So I feel that you could very easily be playing D-Fissure and get maximum advantage out of it going first. And it's a card that I haven't seen a lot of people be playing. I can understand why, but I feel that it's just such a powerful card, being able to really stun your opponent. So something to highly consider if you do want to play this go first. So like I said, if you want to be playing Go First, then Pot of Prosperity is an absolute must because you don't really care about not being able to complete the OTK because you're going to be able to build up a board of protection. And if you want to be going first, you can take out Change of Heart, Sacred Sword of 7. So there's your free Pot of Prosperity straight away. And then you've got 3 Ash Blossoms. You could keep Forbidden Droplet if you want to. 3 Ash Blossoms. And then let's say your 2 Ghost Mourners. So there's your hand trap change. You can still main deck stuff like Forbidden Droplet. Heck, that could be your third Ghost Mourner if you want to. And the reason you play Ghost Mourner instead of Veiler is because Ghost Mourner can be banished under something like D-Shifter. And the idea is you want to be able to activate a card like D-Shifter, lock your opponent down completely, and then be able to use all of your hand traps while they can't use many of theirs. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope this is kind of give you an insight into what Kashtiras can do. I do highly expect that at the start you will see a good revival of this deck. A lot of people might try and play it. A lot of people that played it before and then kind of let it go because of the ban list may now come back to it to test it out, see what they can do with it, and build off the back of it. I feel it can definitely be an anti-meta rogue underdog deck, and I do feel that it's going to cause a few issues, so be very aware of it. But for now, as absolutely always, like, comment, subscribe, share, and until next time, stay safe, and of course, happy dueling.